we're getting together to discuss the harassment policy and the suggestion that we replace it with a U.S. recommendation to, the attorney's recommendation to consolidate several policies into the one that he recommends. And in reading it, I got really confused and I have a lot of questions. So I don't know if maybe Brad, you might want to say something first before I start asking questions, or you wanted me just to start with my questions.
Well, you all had the packet distributed to you in advance. This is Attorney McAvoy's recommendation that over the course of years, as laws were added and as protected classes were added, MASC basically created new policies for those specific protected classes. And his recommendation is that if you create an overarching policy to protect all protected classes, you can eliminate the individual policies that are out there. Some that has not made it through MASC yet, that I'm aware of. I haven't seen a draft policy from MASC about this, but that is MASC being the School Committee Association, but that is Attorney McAvoy's recommendation. And so he's recommending that the school committee adopt that new policy AC, that is the first policy in your packet, and then eliminate your original policy AC, and also eliminate policy ACA, which is sexual non-discrimination on the basis of sex, ACAB, which is about sexual harassment, and JBA, which is student-to-student harassment. So with that introduction, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you for questions that I'll try to answer based on my conversation.
All right, now you've introduced MASC. So if this is coming from the government, I would assume this would have jurisdiction over all of us. And what can MASC do? They will amend it, or they just have to accept it as we do. I'm not sure. I don't like let me just tell you what my problem is. I don't like eliminating all the fine points. I'm not sure I understand it all, but I read it several times, and I'm concerned that by making it more general and less specific, there'd be less ability for a person to have a grievance and to state a grievance and to have a protection to be able to do that. So am I wrong? When we consolidate this, we're losing all the detail of all the individual ACA, ACAB.
I'm sorry, Nancy, I don't mean to chime in. I do have some concerns about that as well. I also have some concerns that we're not including some of those groups in. Like, we typically have a student representative on our school committee, which I haven't seen that person this year as of yet. And I think we should have the student body involved. I think that we should have teachers involved in this. I was actually going to make a recommendation to table this because I think we need to do some further research and discussion into it. So I know we're going to have a discussion about this, but it would be my want to table this until we can have further input from staff, students, people who are affected by this.
Well, one of the other things that I found was a mention of a compliance officer.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that compliance officer, how she Christine Shaw, I don't know if she currently is, that's the name I saw.
I'm
How
sorry.
that person is selected and what her influences. And, you know, I don't, help me here. You know, I'm struggling. What her jurisdiction is, what kind of authority she has, the compliance officer. What makes it, what are the requirements of a compliance officer? How are they selected and what's their authority? There you go.
So a compliance officer, it depends on the basis for which someone is alleging harassment, but the compliance officer is an individual who is the employed an employee of Shawsheen who has who one brings the complaint to and traditionally works with the attorney for the district to conduct an investigation of the allegation of harassment based on what basis it is on. There are different procedures. The federal government has put together different procedures for investigating harassment based on sex, harassment based on sexual orientation.
Yeah,
Those have different procedures, and people need to be trained and have access to the in this case it would be Howard while they conduct the investigation.
but the grievance,
Okay, I guess, Nancy, I could probably chime in here because I have had some experience with this on a personal level. And I'm not trying to bring personal issues into this, but I can tell you right now.
I just want to remind everybody
again, I think
that this meeting is being recorded and for rebroadcast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
Listen, Brad, if anybody knows me out,
Lisa,
anybody knows me out there, they know that
I just want to make sure you're aware.
Absolutely. I'm talking about my experiences with which we've had school committee members talk about their experiences prior. If we're talking about this, then I would have some concerns because I think that on a personal level, I had an experience like this last year with one of my students, and I don't think it was handled appropriately, and things were not documented right. I think we need to have a procedure in place for this position. So, I mean, I have concerns about taking, like you said, Nancy, a bunch of this stuff away and kind of consolidating it all. And it seems like it's going to be a bigger role for, I think, Sedina students to be doing this. So I think there needs to be training involved. Where is that training coming from? You know, we have to have some, it's not something I feel that we can make a decision on overnight. And I think that's kind of what's being asked. Like we can make this decision and I'm sorry, is there something going on? Oh no, I saw Brad talking. I didn't know if there was, I was asking
my wife to get me my phone so I could, because I had a question for somebody I wanted to ask.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, okay. All right. Well, I guess we're okay. Anyway. So I guess for me, it's really, it's not something that we can make a decision on personally, I feel, overnight and then bring it to the school committee. I think we have to have further discussions about this, and we have to have input from the student body and from teachers and staff. It's just, you know, other districts are, you know, are other districts doing this too? Like, you know, I know you said that Matt McAvoy kind of brought this up. I mean, is he working with other districts on this as well? Are we the only district actually trying to consolidate these policies? I mean, what has MASC said about it?
I have not consulted MASC. I'd be happy to do that.
but I'm assuming everybody has to go through it. I mean, don't we assume that every?
Yeah, I'd be kind of curious what other vocational schools are doing.
Well, I think honestly, we need to follow. What's that?
Sorry, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We need to follow what the attorneys are saying for language. I don't think we should be changing anything. You know, at this point, you're kind of playing with fire. I think if we want to hold off and table this and get a little more information and wait for the state to come out with something, okay. But I think we need to follow what the attorneys are telling us to do.
Well, we didn't follow what the attorneys told us to do about the superintendent position. I mean, we're making this decision as school committee members.
Can
I
I
don't,
jump in
I
here?
know. Absolutely. I'll put it,
Go ahead, Patty.
All right, I think you're making this harder than it should be.
I agree.
The problem is the laws have changed. We're just trying to put this all in one policy. I mean, still all the little details that were in the other policies still exist. This just makes it a little broader in terms to
myself
include
on mute. Hold on.
everyone. And I assume we've always had a compliance officer because that's mandated, that has been mandated. So I'm not sure what the issue is here. I like it, you know, an attorney has decided this is how he would put it all together, and I agree, so.
That was my first inclination, and that's what I thought it was going to be until I started reading. And I still
Yeah.
don't understand how the compliance officer is chosen and what their qualifications are. Seems to me to have a lot of authority, the compliance officer. Does that person decide who goes to Howard and gets heard, or is that just an automatic, once somebody comes to the compliance officer, they get heard? I don't understand the process. And Patty, if you
Compliance
say,
officer is just your first person that you meet. If you think something's been done, that's who you go to.
and
They don't
then,
make decisions on it.
and then what happens?
Then they tell you how to make the complaint and where to go from there. They're like an advisory role.
Okay.
They actually, in some cases, they do initial investigations. But there is always but you're correct, Pat, that they are kind of the first point of contact for someone who has who alleges that they are being harassed.
Does the school do anything investigatory?
That person is the school.
So
I
they
would
do.
like to see some information on that before I would make a decision. And I don't think I'm blowing it out of proportion. I think we need to have people invested in this, student, staff, and the people that are being affected by this. But that's just my opinion.
Patty, you said you think the details will remain. You mean that all the little subtitles that we're eliminating are still going to be? I don't understand how they can.
Because they're the law, that's all. I mean, that's part of the law. As soon as you say you cannot discriminate, you cannot harass, you can't do these. So all those other extra things that were in our policies still remain because they're just explaining
So what's changed?
references.
So, yeah.
The Title
this
IX,
just brings them all together.
But I
This is
know,
the
but
way the law is written.
all right. What are other vocational schools or school districts doing on this? Are they doing the same thing? Have we reached out to any of those districts?
I have not. I have to tell you that if the subcommittee wants to move slowly on this, I'm okay with that. This perhaps may be a little bit more than we're ready to bite off. That's fine. From my view, I haven't seen, I've looked at some of these sexual harassment, these policies. They obviously haven't been reviewed in a long time. The grievance officer that's listed in the policy, for example, Christine Shaw, hasn't worked at Shawsheen for almost a decade.
Okay, that's the name I saw. Thank
Well,
you.
that's in the policy. And the process is that those things are updated each year in the student handbook, which is why the student handbook has procedures, and the attorney is trying to take procedure things and move them where they belong, which is in the handbook. And the policy is supposed to be a broad explanation that basically says we do not discriminate against people based on their blah 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 blah
Okay.
blah, and that
Okay.
and the information about how those those allegations of harassment are investigated. Those issues that process is outlined in our student handbook.
That's what I was asking.
Which is why we needed to update the student handbook, because the Title IX investigatory process significantly changed by the federal government that became effective in early August. And we needed to update the student handbook before we opened school in the fall, which is why we did this backwards.
So we're doing it backwards. Okay, now I get it.
But
right.
the attorney is also trying to take out some of the procedural things, like naming a grievance officer in a policy. In my opinion, that doesn't belong in a policy. That's why the school committee reviews the student handbook every year and reviews all the changes to it. So
My concern is for the I'm sorry, Brad, I didn't
No,
mean
it's
to.
okay. That's okay.
My concern is, and I don't want to say it, I think I'm repeating myself, is that there aren't enough detailed steps. But if you're saying that they're in the handbook, then I will go with that. So you're saying this is a general and that's more specific.
And perhaps we should reschedule, and I can provide you copies of the the student handbook piece that we approved in August. There's actually also consolidated procedures that Matt has recommended for all other investigations of discrimination. Again, to make sure they're all aligned with federal law and regulation. These things change as a result of lawsuits that are made at the federal law, at the federal level, court ruling at the circuit court or court of appeals. So the place traditionally where you need to be more flexible is in your procedures and not in your policy, which is a general statement that we don't discriminate. MASC, having said that, MASC does not agree with that all the time. They write oftentimes they write policies that have a lot of procedure built into them.
Well, let me ask you a question. So you said at a federal level, at a federal level, that that this is all kind of written out. So I mean, when you're talking state and federal laws, and Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, with your background and my background, but when you're looking at state and federal laws, if we don't change anything in here, and the federal laws remain this way, I mean, aren't the federal laws reinforcement enough until we get?
Yes. We will follow federal law regardless of what.
Yeah, so we're still covered either way until we sort this out.
If that's the approach the subcommittee wants to take, that's fine.
Well, I'm asking. It's not the approach I want to take. It's just that, you know, being part of the subcommittee is what I'm asking. So even if we don't decide on this and move it forward, federal laws still cover us or cover the students.
We will follow federal law regardless
Okay.
of what the policy says.
Okay.
This basically
that's
was
why-
to,
Go ahead,
this was
Patty.
to correct our student handbook.
Well, we
When we
corrected
did our
that.
student handbook, there was an issue about the laws that had changed and we needed to change our policy book. So that's why we decided to get the policy subcommittee together and ask the attorney what's the best way to put it in there. And he gave us what he gave us, and I'm ready to vote on it right now.
I'm ready too, Patty.
I'm ready to table it, to be honest with you. I think we need more information. So I would make a recommendation to table it.
Well, I'm starting to get the picture better. I think maybe I need to talk to Brad a little bit more about it, but you guys are ready to vote?
I'm ready to vote.
Well, I put a motion out to table it.
Well, we have to move on that.
No, we need a second.
I'm waiting for a second. Didn't anybody second it?
I make a motion to pass it as it is.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
And abstained? I'm abstaining. I'm still got to find out more. So I guess it passes.
So this is to, the motion was to bring this forward to this committee
Right.
for a vote. So
Yes.
this will be, this will go with a recommendation to approve forward to the school committee in October, at the October meeting. In the meantime, that will also give me an opportunity to research some of the questions that you've asked, since it's likely you'll ask them at the meeting in October as well. So then we'll wait and see what the committee, what the committee decides based on that.
Could I get that policy? Maybe that'll help me understand it better. The
Yeah, I think I
student-
like the procedures too.
The procedures.
Yeah,
Yep. Those are going to be included in the packet as well.
all right.
And and then Nancy, I would actually ask for any training too. If we're going to be training somebody to do this, then I'd like to see what the training is going to consist of and who's going to be training.
Training for what
The
you talking?
compliance officer.
Compliance
Do we-
officer.
How
Do-
this,
do
how
we-
this, how the whole process is going to work and how
Well,
this person's going
what
to train.
do we have a compliance officer now?
Yes.
Well, that's what I'm asking. How was that person chosen and what are their qualifications?
That person is chosen, it's, in most cases, it is the dean of students, unless it is a staff on staff issue.
And who is it currently?
The dean of students. If it's a staff on staff issue, it is me.
Oh, depending on the grievance, you're saying. Okay. All right. Well, I guess the next step is to see, all right, we'll talk.
Okay.
Anything else to discuss? That's it, right?
Nope. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Not aye.
Thank you,
Opposed?
everybody.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Brad,
All
can,
right, you too.
Brad, can we talk later on?
Yes,
Bye.
ma'am. We want to talk tomorrow?
Yeah. What's a good time for you?
Hold on just a minute.